Chapter 10, Mishnah 2. In contrast to the previous Mishnah, which spoke of an opening that measures at least a tefach square, this Mishnah deals with a smaller opening. However, as far as the Mishnah's first rulings are concerned, there is no difference between the two sizes. The difference is relevant only to the rulings that follow. If the opening is smaller than a tefach square, the law is that if the source of tuma is in the house, i.e. under the roof, utensils on the ground opposite, i.e. directly below, the opening remain tahor, because they are not in the ohel of the tuma. And if the tuma is opposite the opening, utensils under the roof of the house remain tahor, because the tuma under the opening goes upward in a straight line and does not spread into the house. The previous Mishnah taught that if someone standing on the roof covers the opening with his foot, the cover formed by his foot combines with the roof to make a single ohel. Therefore, regardless of where the piece of corpse is located, its tuma spreads to utensils anywhere in the house. Furthermore, the tuma extends through the opening to make the person tameh. The Mishnah spoke of an opening that is a tefach square. Our Mishnah considers the law where the opening is smaller. If the source of tuma is in the house, i.e. under the roof, and someone places his foot over the opening, which is smaller than a tefach square, he remains tahor. The tuma is unable to reach his foot because tuma cannot pass through a hole of this size. However, if the tuma is opposite the opening and someone places his foot over the opening, the law in this case is the subject of dispute. Rabbi Meir rules that a person becomes tameh because part of his body covers the tuma. However, the sages say that the question of whether he becomes tameh depends on the circumstances. If the tuma came to its place under the opening before the person's foot came to its place over the opening, he becomes tameh. But if his foot came to its place over the opening before the source of the tuma came to its place under the opening, he remains tahor. In the first case, where the piece of corpse is in place first, it transmits tuma through the opening to the sky. Thus, as soon as the person's foot begins to enter the space over the piece of corpse, he becomes tameh. In the opposite case, however, where the opening is covered by his foot before the piece of corpse is placed under the opening, he remains tahor. The reason is that when his foot covers the opening, it seals the gap in the roof, thus creating a new roof that covers the entire building. The tuma is unable to pass through this new roof to reach the foot. The next Tana, Rabbi Shimon, basically agrees with the sages, who hold that if the foot came first, it cannot become tameh from a piece of corpse that is placed under the opening later. Rabbi Shimon rules that this law applies in the following case as well. Rabbi Shimon says, if two people each placed a foot over the opening such that their 2 feet are one on top of the other, and their feet came to their place over the opening before the source of tuma came to its place under the opening, and then the first person removed his foot so that the second person's foot is now found there blocking the opening, the second person remains tahor because the first one's foot came to its place and blocked the opening before the tuma entered the space beneath the opening. Rabbi Shimon agrees with the sages that if someone has his foot on the opening before the piece of corpse is placed beneath it, he does not become tameh. Rabbi Shimon holds that the same is true of the second person in our case, because the placement of his foot over the opening is not something new that happened after the tuma entered the space. Rather, it is a continuation of the placement of the first person's foot, which started before the tuma was present. Thus, the second person too is like someone whose foot preceded the tuma.